Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Soul Path Community class on Friday, and today we're going to talk about Pallas Athena, the wisdom warrior asteroid goddess. Here's the chart for today. And actually, I've been working through the asteroids, and pretty soon we'll do Juno. So we are going to have a whole library full of these asteroid talks. And I thought to do Pallas next because I just happened to notice that when we come to the February 20th alignment of Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, that Pallas will be conjunct that alignment. And we'll see that chart in a while. But right now, today's chart, Pallas, and I think I want to call her Athena, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Is like, why does she have two names? But let's say Athena in Aquarius right now is in a sextile to our Sagittarian energy at this moment in time, and in a sextile to Chiron in Aries. And there is this sense that this energy of the wisdom warrior archetype is connecting to the bravery and courage that we need to develop the independence with Chiron, and also connected to Sagittarius, where we're so involved right now on fighting for what's right and being connected to what our beliefs are, what they need to be or should be. And this is also connected to Jupiter being in Cancer for this year. And that is asking us again to connect to what is true for us, what our beliefs are, and have those beliefs in some way connected to the heart, partly because of the sign of Cancer, partly also that Jupiter is in a trine, a flow with Saturn Neptune. One of the things I want to mention to you all, even though I think you all are following astrology to know this, but it's worth it to pay attention to the fact that Neptune just went direct the other day. Saturn went direct a couple of weeks ago, and they are in their very last weeks of being in the sign of Pisces. And I'm feeling very strongly this kind of last piece, like the final exam when planets are in the 29th degree or close to it, that what we've been working on for many years, Neptune in Pisces since 2011, Saturn in Pisces since the spring of 2023, Neptune giving us the download and a huge amount of spiritual truth, awakening, an understanding that we're all part of one consciousness, and Saturn helping us to stabilize it, to be mature and grounded in our practice, to take it seriously. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by the chaos in the world and the suffering and the martyrdom and victimization of people, then the application of spiritual practice in the most grounded way that you can cultivate is what will help you. And basically what I'm finding, people I'm talking to, people who have been having spiritual practice for the whole life, for decades, we're all finding that it doesn't take much to throw us off center right now. And it takes definite meditation, breathing, yoga, feeding ourselves positive energy, all the things. And we can just feel ourselves shift back and forth between the two timelines, the timeline of, hate and destruction, and the timeline of new beginnings, and what this Saturn Neptune is meant to be when it joins and creates a 36-year cycle in Aries in February. And Pallas Athena is very much part of this because she is a wise person. She is connected to working with the deepest truths in a powerful way and fighting for what is right. So here are some of her main aspects. Wisdom and strategy. So, feeling intuitively to the deepest intuition and strategizing around the highest level action. Craftsmanship and the arts. So any kind of art can fall under Athena, but especially things like weaving and pottery and, jewelry, things that are often considered more crafts are a little bit more her area than, let's say, the Neptunian Pisces aspect of transcendent creativity. Anything to do with justice, diplomacy, governance, the running of cities, the running of organizations. How can this be done skillfully? Creative problem solving, the integration of the intellect with intuition. So what I teach a lot in the intuitive trainings, remember, we go back and forth with the infinity symbol, figure 8 on its side, and we learn to blend together the right and the left brains. This is Athena's area of being able to be intuitive and connected on that level, but also being intelligent, being connected to the intellect, thinking things through. Then we have architecture and technology, so the processes of building. And she was known as someone who's like upholding a sense of individuality or celibacy, a free woman basically, but not out of a moralistic perspective that we might think of Vesta. There was this idea of purity for Vesta. But Athena stays single to preserve consciousness and focus. There are 4 symbols for Pallas Athena. First, the owl, representing far-seeing wisdom. The owl in traditional belief systems is very much about clairvoyance and intuition and wisdom and intellect and seeing things. So really that blend between left and right brain is owl's territory. Then we have the spear, and you usually see the statues of Pallas Athena holding a spear. The aegis or shield with Medusa's head, this represents discernment and boundary setting. And maybe I can say here that the spear represents precise strategy. Whoops, I go back here. Trying to let somebody in, and I can't with the black background there. Okay. So again, the shield made from Medusa's head has the energy of discernment and boundary setting, and the olive tree representing peace and cultivation and civilization. So those were traditional mythological aspects to Pallas Athena. Now, when we think about this as the asteroid itself, just to get the astronomy behind it, the original name was 2 Pallas, discovery March 28, 1802 by Heinrich Albrecht, second asteroid ever discovered. And we know that the asteroid belt runs between Mars and Jupiter. And when we think about this, the placement of the asteroid belt is something that connects pretty strongly to Pallas Athena, which is Mars represents will, action, and war, and Jupiter represents wisdom and vision, beliefs, the justice, the bigger picture of things. So Pallas Athena is a very good representative in general of where the asteroid belt lies in space. She's slightly smaller than Vesta, about 512 kilometer diameter, And the orbital period is 4.62 years, so about 5 years to get all the way around the chart. So you're going to have a Pallas Athena return every 4.5, 5 years. I couldn't find an actual picture of the asteroid, so I did they use this picture here of a bunch of them, because it's pretty busy there in that asteroid belt. But like many of these asteroids, Pallas Athena is a rocky body that has, an odd shape. And interestingly, they say the orbit is highly inclined, which could be a metaphor for perspective and alternate viewpoints. So the Athena origin story starts with Zeus and I want to pronounce it Métis. I don't know if in the Greek language if it's Metis. Probably could be, but coming from Canada where we have the French indigenous mixture of people called Métis. So let's say Métis or Métis. She was a Titaness whose name means wisdom, cunning, skillful intelligence, craft, and counsel. And there was a prophecy that she would bear 2 children, and the second would be a powerful son. Now, as you know, Zeus didn't want anybody to overtake his power ever, so he swallowed Metis whole while she was pregnant with Athena. And what happened was, Metis survived inside of him, as did Athena. And we can kind of call this the metaphor of having wisdom within power, wisdom inside of power. So one day, Zeus gets a splitting headache, and Athena springs fully forward, fully formed out of his forehead. And she is armored, she is radiant, she is powerful, she is this wisdom warrior goddess. And they said her war cry shook Olympus. She represented from day one intelligence, the father's daughter who transcends the father, feminine power that is not dependent on biology, and wisdom emerging within and through the patriarchal systems. Athena became Zeus's most trusted advisor over time. We can think, because she is a warrior, we can think about the fact that Mars, the planet of war, Mars fights with force, but Athena fights with strategy and elegance. We can think of Mars being impulsive, but Athena is tactical. So there's a great deal of reserve, strength, definitely warrior fighting, but very calculated, very built deeply into the wisdom structure. So when we look at Pallas Athena in our charts, we see it as an emblem of excuse me, creative intelligence, strategic thinking, timing, diplomacy, negotiation, somatic wisdom, healing modalities, mind-body connection, again, the intuitive and logic being synthesized, feminine warrior energy, which often has to do with protection, pattern recognition, male-female integration, and conflict resolution. Coming back to this idea of the name, Pallas Athena, why has she got 2 names? She was originally called Athena. And there are 2 stories circulating about why Pallas got added to the name. The first was that there was a young woman named Pallas who was either her really good friend or her foster sister. And they were sparring, playing warrior games. And Athena accidentally killed her. and felt so terrible about it that she put her name onto her name to kind of embody her and honor her. And the meaning of this has to do with being able to consider that the level of precision and consciousness that's needed when you are a warrior. And so it really sort of takes to that fine tuning that Pallas Athena is always doing. The second story was more about Athena was in a warrior fighting situation with a Titan, and killed him and turned his skin into a shield, and it's like sort of the goriness of battle, emphasizing more the Mars aspect of her abilities as a warrior. Either way, she took that name, Pallas, put it on her name, and we can call her Pallas or Pallas Athena or just Athena. In terms of honoring this particular asteroid within your own practice, you can think about doing meditation with the owl, calling an owl as a spirit animal for you. You can enjoy creativity like weaving, drawing, or inventing things, using the mind to be creative. You can work on strategy by visioning or journaling. You can practice sacred discernment. So boundaries, compassionate truth speaking, any of the physical, spiritual practices, the martial arts. I'm mentioned Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga. Those are the softer ones. But if you're up for it, Aikido or Kung Fu or any physical practice that's working with energy could be part of a Pallas Athena practice. And then being an advocacy activist or a volunteer to protect and to help others. That's also an aspect of the sacred that goes along with Pallas Athena. In your altar, you might consider having a little vessel of olive oil, a woven basket, or a little piece of pottery. That can be something that can be part of your connection to her. And there's a number of colors that are considered connected, starting with gold, emerald green, white for purity, blue, gray. So many colors seem to be connected to her. Now here's the chart for February 20th, and we see that we have the sun at 1, almost 2 degrees of Pisces, Pallas Athena at 8, almost 9, the North Node at 8, almost 9. Then we have Venus 12, Mercury 20-ish, all that Pisces. So we're very focused on that energy of the wise warrior in the sign of mysticism, spirituality, intuition, compassion. And of course, we have been working at that point for over a year with the nodes in Pisces and Virgo. We're letting go of Virgo that is holding us back. We're too picky, we're too critical, we're anxious, we're worried, and we are invited to move forward with a great deal of intensity. And you can see that Pallas is in the middle of that stellium. Mars, even though it's out of sign, it's in Aquarius, Mars is definitely conjunct the sun. And Venus, the planet that relates to the divine feminine, is there in Pisces as well. So we've got Pallas Athena, and I often say this, that the asteroids are often putting a fine point or details on things that are actually already going on in the planets themselves. So Mars and Venus in that big stellium, and the sun for the power and the action. we're already getting the sense that as of February, we must operate to protect those who are vulnerable, to be an advocate, to take strong action that's steeped in wisdom, compassion, and spirituality. And all of that flows in the stellium with the Saturn Neptune alignment that's at 0 degrees and 44 minutes of Aries, and saying, yeah, we've brought in all this Pisces energy since 2011, and it's now time to move things forward in a new way and fight for it. If it's not just happening and we can't just run with it, we have to fight for what we know to be true on a deep spiritual level, to care for those who are struggling and marginalized, to take care of those who are sick, to take care of the planet even. And we also have the moon in the sign of Aries at the same time. So emotionally, as a collective, we are emotionally connected to new ideas and being brave and courageous to take life to the next level. And you can see also that Ceres and Chiron are also in Aries. So we know Ceres represents the divine mother, the nurturing element, but this nurturing is not soft. This nurturing is caretaking, but in a way that is fierce and protective and needing the courage and bravery to carry out. And Chiron is already in Aries and saying, yes, you can do it. You can look at your life and see that you're capable of this. And the Jupiter in Cancer is in a trine to the middle of the stellium. So these belief systems that we have been thinking about are feeding into this whole stellium. It's very, very powerful, and I encourage you all, if you can't see the time here, February 20th, 2026, of course, 8:38 a.m. Eastern Time. And interestingly to me, we all get into these master numbers and we're seeing 1111, and it is, part of the rewiring of our genetic material. This is 8:38 minutes and 38 seconds. And 3 and 8 add up to 11. So there is a way that this is an 1111 movement forward. And again, I encourage you to take this chart as a transit chart and put it on your own chart and really think about what is being asked of you based on this new synodic cycle of Saturn Neptune. What is your role? What is your goal? What are you here for? And can you start to get ready? Now, you will remember that looking at asteroids before, when we were looking at Hygeia and Vesta as emblems of the sacred, and there's healing, holistic healing in Hygeia, and the sacred and divine kind of healing structure of Vesta, I thought, well, let's just see for, these two charts that had such a strong impact there, where is Pallas Athena there? So we see that Florence Nightingale, who was such a warrior, defying the culture of the time to go and be with men in the war who were sick, injured, dying, and be a nurse to them. I mean, this was considered, just like immoral that she would have to do with men's bodies. And there she has Pallas Athena in Leo, conjunct Mars, the 11th house of activism, and in a flowing trine to her North Node in Aries. So here she was, a bold pioneer, and definitely with Hygeia conjunct Venus in Cancer, the healer, and taking care of bodies, new moon in Taurus conjunct Vesta. All of the asteroids are kind of standing up and being part of who she is. And then, of course, we also had Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa's Hygeia, holistic healing, is in the 9th house of beliefs and religions. Of course, she's associated with the Catholic Church. Vesta in Taurus, connected to her Taurus North Node and Moon in the 6th house, having to do with being of service, connecting to the bodies. And here we have Pallas Athena in Pisces, connected to Chiron in Pisces in the 2nd house. And 2nd house, by its association with Taurus, can often have to do with the body as well. But it has to do with resources. And I think that what she is most known for is working on the streets of Calcutta to help people who were, basically homeless and struggling and suffering. And, her chart absolutely shows that that's what she did. Of course, we always have to, pay attention to the fact that over time we're learning more about history than what we were all taught in school. So we know now that she was not a perfect person. She could be quite mean and cruel. Her diaries showed that as much as she was doing all this service work, she questioned her faith on a regular basis. But nevertheless, she still took care of a lot of people. And her chart shows that she is, well connected by the asteroids to be someone who would be a healer and would take care of those who are marginalized. And here we have the chart of K. And as you know, that's me. And I wanted to tell you a little story, because when I found out about Pallas Athena many years ago and the connection in my chart, as you can see, 5th house conjunct Pluto very, very tightly, it was really the first asteroid that I could relate to in a particularly strong way. I mean, Vesta on the ascendant, being a healer, issues around sexuality can come through with Vesta and conjunct Venus and Aries. There's the sort of the boldness of my chart around the Aries in a grand trine with Pluto and Mars. And Hygeia conjunct the South Node Uranus, definitely holistic healer, interested in holistic stuff from the time I was very young, and it helped me heal a lot. But I'm going to tell you just a little Pallas Athena story. So when my father found out that my mother was pregnant, which happened accidentally when they were very young, and my mother was actually engaged to another man, this is a horror story in 1953. Because he came from a family in Scotland that had never had a female child in history that anybody knew of. Every generation was all boys. He told my mother that if she didn't have a girl, because he wanted the notoriety of being the first one to have a girl, if she didn't have a girl, don't bother coming home from the hospital. And so my mother, luckily for her, had a girl, and it was me. And he came to the hospital, because, in those days, men were not in the birthing room. He came to the hospital, and apparently what he brought as a birth present for me was a little hockey stick, a little child's hockey stick. Kind of weird. And then proceeded to raise me a little bit like a boy. Like, for instance, my sister got to have white, cute girls' figure skates, but I got boys' black leather hockey skates. Those are two very different kind of skate, if you know ice skating. And he would flood the backyard every year and taught me to play hockey. And of course, we played field hockey in school in Canada. And then as I got a little bit older, we had a summer cottage on a lake in northern Ontario, and he was building that from a little tiny thing that didn't have insulation and didn't have many rooms. He kept building and expanding, and I was the one that had to help him. So we never even thought to ask my sister, who came along 4 years later, And it's not because she was younger. It was like she was treated as the girl and I was treated as the boy in the family. And I did insulation, laid floors, did plumbing, woodwork, like everything, so that we took this little cabin into a full-blown house. And that was the way that I grew up with him. And he liked it that I was strong and independent. And in fact, he never approved of any of my boyfriends. He was always threatening to them. He was a cop. He was 6'3", 240 pounds, and he would literally show his gun when a boy came to date me. He would, pull back his suit jacket and show his gun holster and, threaten them with, you better bring her home by, 10 o'clock or whatever, and, don't touch her. And when I brought home in my 20s my first serious female romantic partner, he loved her. He was so happy. He was so happy I was in that relationship, and never ever approved of any male that I was involved with. So here we have, kind of a current world example of Pallas Athena, the wisdom rising through the father. Fifth house, which is connected to the sign of Leo, and this is in Leo. And some people will consider that the fifth house, because of that Leo connection and ruled by the sun, connects to the father. And then we add Pluto, the planet that is absolutely of, power, transformation, but also wounding, is very connected to that Pallas Athena. And so, yeah, I wanted to share that story with you of my, how I was raised. The other thing was that he insisted that whenever I went out on a date with a boy, that I had to have money so that I could pay my own way. I was not allowed to ever have any male pay for anything for me. I had to be independent financially of anyone I dated from the time I was, 12 or 13, started dating. So there is a real world modern example of how Pallas Athena just might show up in someone's life, and I thought it was illuminating. So as always, for people who are here in person, we are going to look a little bit at Pallas Athena in your chart and think about where it is by house and sign, what current transit, where that current transit is, where it's in Aquarius and it's moving into Pisces, and maybe even the progress chart. And I know a number of you have been signing up for the classes. It's really great to see. Intuitive life skills on Sundays, starting in January. The intuitive class, not called Intuitive Saturdays because it can't be on Saturdays for 10 weeks because of the Kepler consulting skills. And the 2026 Year Ahead Workshop, always fun to look at the year's energies and how they affect you in your chart. And the Astrology Mentorship Group, which will be on Saturday afternoons starting in January. So if you're, liking and, engaged in the astrology, this is going to be a time to work on charts and really go very, very deep. So much to do, so much to connect with you all. So thank you for listening to this part of our class, and let's take a look at charts.